Let's do it.
Sounds great.
This is the Trade Show's Unhinged podcast, a podcast from the Facebook group You Know You Work in Trade Shows When. This podcast centers on trade shows, live events, and experiential marketing activations in today's world. Your hosts are Todd, who is the owner of Showbox Exhibits and the creator of the Facebook group You Know You Work in Trade Shows When, and Mike Morrison, Vice President of Sales for WS Display. The clock is ticking, so let's get busy and get to it, and we'll do just that after this.
Need a presenter? Your Event Audio has you covered. Closed-circuit audio equipment with turnkey operation at your trade show booth, live event, or private event. YourEventAudio.com is the place to go. DJ services, MC talent, and a whole lot more. Check out YourEventAudio.com today.
Well, as you can see, a little bit different than the last couple of episodes for Trade Shows Unhinged. I guess the word unhinged can take different meanings in different aspects, and this is one of those times. Of course, I'm Mike Morrison, VP of Sales of WS Display and co-host of Trade Shows Unhinged on our main platform, which is the Facebook group You Know You Work in Trade Shows When ... or the ellipsis, as it were, and a crazy place where it's been growing, and very appreciative of all the listeners and viewers of our show, both on social media as well as that group specifically. Todd, who created that group, unfortunately unable to join this week because, as many of you know, the Gulf of Mexico was not very kind to Texas, and especially down in the Gulf, in the Houston area, where Todd is based out of with Showbox Exhibits. And he got hit with a tree against the house earlier this week, and also lack of electricity, which we all know that is bound to happen in the hurricane season and types of events like this. So I've checked with him. Everything's good. He just wishes he had a generator now, I believe. But, those are very invaluable, Jim, as I'm sure you could appreciate and echo too. Jim Wurm joins us this week, pinch hitting for Todd, and being our special guest this week. Many know Jim as the executive director of the EACA, the Exhibitor Appointed Contractors Association, from all the way back when we did Don and Mike days to the advocacy podcast we just finished up on Exhibitor Group's site, and now joins me for this episode of Trade Shows Unhinged. And just first of all, you look good. Everything's good, I'm assuming, up in the Northwest.
Well, it's a lot better today than it was the last couple of days. We had a heat wave come through, which is cause for concern for folks, particularly those that may be in this community that don't have air conditioning, because this is the kind of community that usually you don't need it. But lately we've been hit with 100 plus temperatures, about 20-25 degrees above normal, and so but today we're getting a break, which is nice. Walking outside feels good.
So it's a very appreciative moment that when those days happen and you come out of it. I was in off subject. I was in Mexico at our facility yesterday, Tijuana, and coming back across the border, as many of us have done many times, whether it was on tourism trips or business trips. You get even in the Century line or the Worldwide Pass line, whatever they call it,
right?
Ready Pass
global
lines.
Yeah.
The global, it gets a little long, So
Yeah.
you right there at the border, you get to see all of the reality of an appearance of a third world country.
Right.
In essence, that border crossing is pretty tough, and makes you appreciate those things that you have, and the times that we're in where you're not down in that particular side of the world. Plus the heat. The heat down there is pretty much indicative of what's happening with the West Coast heat waves that are happening, and also in the Midwest. So
Right.
Hopefully this will get some relief here shortly as we move along. Just recently, though, Jim, you released the most recent edition, 1st of July, actually, for EACA's News Blast. And I asked you on because there was a couple of stories that I feel really hit home to our audience. A lot of our audience is the labor side of our industry, and they're probably interested in certain aspects of things, especially at the Las Vegas Convention Center. and the authority that runs that. And they've come out with some updated news specifically in parking, as we were talking off mic about, as well as in your newsletter about scooter policy of all things during setup in the show hall. So maybe you could bring us up to date on that particular subject.
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to the building for reaching out to the contractor community. They invited both the generals and the EACs in just to provide updates on their expansion plans, new construction, things of that nature, because that changes the dynamics of how labor enters the building, where they should go, where they should park, things of that nature. But along with that, one of the things that they've been looking at, they said for some time, were the two-wheeled scooters. And in fact, I happened to be working in New York a couple of weeks ago, and they were wanting people not to ride around on the two-wheeled scooters there either. Evidently, that's a word that's been getting around, that four-wheeled carts are fine. They're stable. Somebody has to move quickly. They're not going to fall over and land on something that they don't want to, or hit somebody else that doesn't want to be hit. So the two-wheeled scooters are a no-no at the convention center now. People might want to ride them to work, but what happened in New York, and I imagine what would happen in Vegas, is they'll ask them to collapse it and carry it, but don't ride it. The contractor community was fine with that because they don't typically use those kinds of scooters. I think it's probably more of the individual worker type of choice. The four-wheel carts, though, obviously in a big facility like Vegas, going from West Hall to South Hall, that's quite a hike. The carts come in real handy if you're servicing a show like CES or other major shows that use the entire facility. But one of the other questions that comes up at every one of those meetings with the building and with the contractors is about parking, because with expansion and construction, sometimes those lots get consumed, and where you used to be able to park isn't available anymore. And it's enough of a concern that our members and generals have told me the same thing, that sometimes workers get so frustrated with the parking situation that they'll just turn down the call. If the parking cost is too high, A, or B, if they just can't find a place to park and they get frustrated and just say, well, I'm just going to stay home today. So that becomes an ongoing issue. And the other thing, I just had a conversation yesterday with one of our members in Vegas that, some of the other lots that are available behind the South Hall are places where people park, but it's not necessarily the nicest neighborhood. So if it's somebody, a lady that's the parking back there and gets out late at night, you'll want to probably be escorted to your car. Things of that nature are of concern as well. So, worker safety inside the building is a big issue, but we'd like to have them safe outside the building as well when they're coming to work and leaving.
Absolutely. It's tough enough as it is with the labor force shortage that we're having right now and have had since coming back from the pandemic, but then to complicate matters more for the worker who's trying just to get there and do their job. And if it's not easy and it's cost prohibitive, and it's bad enough to have strikes against you. Now you got 3 strikes before you even walk in the door, right? And that makes it very uncomfortable for workers. And I could see them making that decision of, I'll punt on this one, maybe go to a hotel show or something else that could be controlled as far as the cost and the availability of parking. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and that's not a something just to hang around Las Vegas's neck alone. It's not just that's not the only place where I've heard that story take place, but where parking fees get to be somewhat high, then workers get a little frustrated that it's cutting into the money that they can make, particularly if it's an apprentice that's not making a lot an hour as compared to the journeyman would be as well. So, and that's the other issue, obviously, of late is in the building up of the workforce. Is to attract and keep the new contingent of workers that we need to backfill to make up for the folks that we lost during COVID, and so that just becomes part of that issue. Future workforce was obviously a big part of the legislative day effort in DC in May, and that's everybody's concern. Difficult in all categories and all stakeholders' efforts, but but possibly even more difficult for those that are working hourly, because the schedules are up and down. They're not consistent. And, if you need to find somebody that is going to be a salaried worker, that's a little bit of an easier find, because then they have a little bit more of a comfort as to what their earning capacity is going to be. But a newbie on the show floor working, pretty much it's an unknown to them for some time.
I believe you mentioned off mic that next month there's going to be a continuation meeting to go to the next steps with this type of rule making there, and I guess we'll just sit back and watch and see what happens there.
Yeah, well, the good news is that the building is staying in close communication with the contractor community. They know that when you have as much change that's going on at the building there, that it creates changes for everybody that's supplying services to the show, just in terms of access, egress, dates of this lot's going to be open this day and not open that day. This lot, they're going to charge for parking this day and not that day. All these kind of notifications, and the communication is key in this industry. Everybody that can be on the same page makes that job a lot easier for all of us. And because of the surprises are the ones that sometimes create the pain that we'd like to avoid if we could.
I think if thinking outside the box, I would try to get some kind of carpool going between workers that think alike, throw their stuff in the back of the pickup truck and get there and make the best use of the parking fee. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, well, they have marshalling yards for freight. Maybe they need marshalling yards for people.
There you go. You heard it first right here.
where they could park, get on a shuttle, and take them to the building.
That would be kind of like long distance parking at golf courses for major events, things like that.
Disneyland.
Maybe we just need to pick up in the industry and start a company that shuttles workers from the parking lot to the hall.
As long as we charge less than the parking fee, right?
There you go. Get it in quantity. Get it in mass quantity. Always thinking about capitalistic nature. So
somebody's going to want to monetize it.
At the end of the day, that's the pictures of dead presidents ring.
Right. Exactly.
Always have. Let's shift gears to the other side of a story in the newsletter that came out just a week or so ago from EACA, under the guise of California to make hidden fees illegal. Now, this is a Senate bill that you mentioned, 478, State Bill 478, that'll prohibit hidden fees for goods and services it's already begun, July 1st of this year. The amendment to the California Legal Remedies Act aims to eliminate drip pricing, which involves advertising a price that is less than the actual price that a consumer will have to pay for a good or service. What got my attention, though, at reading through all that was your very editorial in red statement, which was, what can this mean for exhibitors who participate in California trade shows? And that's true, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly surprises that exhibitors get hit with all the time. And some of it's maybe based on lack of knowledge and less of experience with working in California, knowing what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. But the one that's near and dear to the hearts of those in the EAC community is the charging of the EAC fee. Then there are some shows that feel like they need to cover, quote unquote, cover the cost of EAC's presence. Now, I wouldn't disagree with the fact that there's some cost involved. If you have to reach out to these folks, have somebody in your office reach out and make sure that they've got the proper credentials as relates to the union contract and the proper insurance coverage. That's all well and good, but with each contractor, you really only have to do it one time. But this EAC fee is charged for every job that the EAC has. So if they have 30 jobs on the show, then they have to pay 30 fees, when really it only costs you to do it one time. So it's really not a cost covering effort. It's really just a money grab that these folks employ as a way to just throw some additional money on the bottom line without realizing, while you think you're charging the fee to the EAC, they don't recognize that the EAC community, particularly for those that supply labor services, is a highly, highly competitive business. If an EAC contractor nets out 2% per year, they are happy. and it's tough to do that. 4% would be like a banner year. So it's not like they can absorb this cost and just eat it. They only have one choice, and that is that they have to pass it along. So it's a tax on the exhibitor for hiring their chosen service provider to come in and provide them with whatever services that client might need on the show floor, which one would assume they can do more efficiently than somebody that's never seen the display before or never worked with a client before. So, I mean, I would know that any show organizer would object if they were forced to hire the building's official contractor and charge them with a fee if they brought in their own. So why they feel like they should do this to their customer is beyond us, but it certainly fits into that category of a hidden fee.
I totally agree. And actually this discussion has been going along for some time now about this fee, not just for California, but all the other major, I won't say within the last year or so, it became a hot topic. And now it just seems that California has been the first to jump as far as making it I would imagine a consumer type of law or a state bill for that, but it could come into play for our industry and the many shows that come to the major cities here in California. I wonder if the other major cities will take note and possibly do something similar, or are you aware of someone else that's already done that?
Well, it would be fabulous if they would, but as far as the fee goes and the conversation about fees goes, it was the driving force behind the formation of the Exhibitor Appointed Contractor Association, because in the 90s that was something that not only was trending tremendously, but it was also something that if you went to an expo, they would have sessions on the values of charging EAC fees. So one of the reasons for the association forming was to create an alternative approach and get to the organizers that were reasonable and would think this out and say, listen, I understand that you have some costs as it relates to doing this job, but we could do it for you more efficiently because these people are members of ours. We know them. We know the legitimate ones. We can vet them and credential them for you. We don't look to make money on it. We just need to cover our costs. So the very first time we issued a proposal to a show, we asked that organizer if they would, it was an every 2-year show, would they take a look at what their internal headcount costs were, their burden costs for doing the job. Came back with it cost them, they thought, something in the neighborhood of between $18,000 and $20,000. I said, well, what if we could do it to you for $5,000? Would that be a good deal? And they said, yeah, you got it. So that's how we got started providing this service to shows. We've done it for countless numbers of shows over the years. We even had our first experience doing it for one of our client shows in Switzerland this year. And it's the same process no matter where the show is. The exhibitors in that particular event can come to our site through a password protected place and identify who their supplier is. And then we go about the process of collecting all the documentation that's necessary for them to be approved to enter the show floor and do their work. And then we also work with the organizer on how they want to do the credentialing. Sometimes we'll do it on site. Sometimes they like to do it themselves.
Being organized and setting up a service like that for a very nominal fee in comparison to what you said happened earlier with the 20 versus 5 comparison. And you're probably getting all the extra credentialing and everything that's involved that you may or may not be getting on the higher rate. I mean, that just makes common sense.
Yeah, and for those shows that work with us, most of them are more than happy to be relieved of that job. Because there is some work involved. There's some back and forth required. You know, when we're reaching out to a client, a member about their presence at an upcoming show, whatever it might be. We just finished up with Bio International and working now on shows like NBAA and PAC Expo. When we do those shows, those EACs are very busy themselves. This is not the only show kit that they have to work their way through. So you have to, we have to do a little bit of nudging sometimes just to gather it. And that's what the show would have to do. But they know that we have a process that makes it a lot easier for them. And typically speaking, we get not only 100% of the labor contractors to sign up, because that's very easy. The only ones that typically can surprise us on occasion is if a display builder decides at the last moment that they're going to send in a supervisor just to visit with the client and oversee the install, and they show up on site and they haven't done any of that work, so we have to put them in a holding pen for a minute until we collect the necessary paperwork, and then we can let them in.
It's not bad. I mean, yeah, no. If you gotta read the rules before you show up.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons that any organizer would want to do that in the first place is because when they sign a lease agreement, they're on the hook for everything that happens in the building during that tenancy. They're responsible for anything and everything, and they don't want to necessarily be responsible for everybody else that's coming in there to work. So if it's an EAC that has a big crew in there, if somebody gets hurt, somebody breaks something, somebody damages something, they want to make sure that that particular company is responsible for their own acts and that they don't have to be on the hook for that. So it's a risk management effort for an organizer, and I get it because I've been there.
Liability is at the top of the list of almost every activity in 2024, right?
Yes.
So, hey, let's take a quick time out. When we come back, we're going to talk about another subject, and also one that's very familiar to our industry, the upcoming Randy Smith Memorial Golf Classic. We're going to talk about that right after this.
Showbox Exhibits, headquartered in Houston, Texas, where they specialize in design, fabrication, and management of your trade show displays. At Showbox, the difference starts with listening to fully understand the unique brand story that's needed. Then they create an innovative, compelling concept that reflects specific event objectives. From static trade show displays to fully custom oversized exhibits featuring multimedia graphics, Showbox brings your company's message to the masses. Showbox is a trade show, convention, and environment design agency that is full service from start to finish. They're based in Houston, Texas, but they serve worldwide. They've been creating exhibits for over 20 years. Showbox Exhibits at showboxexhibits.com. From light boxes, towers, counters, and back walls to turnkey custom exhibits, WS Display is your partner in providing quality displays at extremely aggressive pricing to fit any reseller's budget. Make more profit by teaming up with WS. With a team of experts to assist with estimates, renderings, and CAD, to fulfillment, setup, and test fitting, quality photo proofs, and complete project handling from our East Coast, West Coast, and Pacific fulfillment facilities. We can be your partner today. Hit me up at mike@wsdisplay.com for more information.
You know, when you go over to Europe for a trade show, it's the most interesting anomaly because they usually have 1, 2, possibly even 3 weeks, depending on the size of the show, to set up everything, your booths, your aisle carpet, all the electrical that might be needed, hanging signs, and so forth, right? Well, in America, we don't quite have that opportunity to have those types of lengths of time. Everything is very compressed, as we all know. It's right. You might have 4 hour in, move in if you're lucky, less than 24 out. You know what I mean? Because the next gig is coming in, the next show is coming in that hall. Now it appears, as Jim will enlighten us on, that might even be in question to be even more condensed. Tell us a little bit about that subject.
Well, I think one of the outcomes of COVID and just about any type of business that you were in, that folks had a couple of tough years and were looking to find ways to generate additional income to make up for their shortfall. And in the case of venues, what they did was compress their schedules to try to fit in more tenants in shorter periods of time to maximize the revenue that they generate from rentals. Now, buildings aren't huge profit centers to begin with, but they certainly are looking to try to find ways to cut their losses if they have them. And, obviously coming back, the contractor community, whether it was a general service contractor or the EAC, recognized that this was going to be a challenge because everybody was working with workforces that weren't as large as they were pre-COVID. And can we get this done? But to the testament of the fact that the contractor communities in this industry are very good at their jobs. They figure it out and they figure a way to do it, but it comes with a cost. And the cost is the individual's stress, the individual's burnout capacity for working these long, hard hours in order to get shows in and out. So the contractor community figured out it can be done. The real question becomes now, how long can it last? And is it sustainable? Or are people that are going to get burned out and decide to go somewhere else? And so in the same moment that we're looking to rebuild our workforce or generate more bodies in our future workforce, we don't want to be driving people away because we're working them to death.
So first it's the parking, second it's you can't use your scooter, and now you got less time to do what you need to do. Man, talk about a triple whammy. That's kind of tough. And like you said, we're behind the eight ball when it comes to having good numbers of people to do the job in the first place. Now you got to do it faster. That's a bit of a challenge, but I get it, right? I mean, everybody's trying to play catch up and try to get ahead and make up money they lost back in the pandemic. But there's got to be a reasonable way to address this.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to just say that it's only a challenge for those in the labor business, because I happen to know, because we have members that are in the display building business too, and they have to respond to these shortened timeframes as well. And I know that in particular, one of our members had so much work that they just had to finally just close the door and just say, we're full right now. We've got all we need, because they have people working 12, 14 hours a day, and they were losing them because those folks were burning out. So the burnout doesn't just happen on the show floor. It can happen throughout the industry. And that's the ripple effect, I should say, or the domino effect of a problem existing in one place, but it impacts the entire community. And it's always been part of our philosophy as an organization to say that, you know, the only changes that our industry can adopt and afford and embrace are those that don't create some pain somewhere else because you got rid of your pain here. There's nothing that we would ever want to do that would create a huge problem for somebody else because it's not sustainable. And at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is make sure that an exhibitor that wants to come to a show has a great experience and great success and wants to come back. Because if they do, we all win.
It's the entire ecosystem. You're exactly right. I sit in a sales role, and for the last 8.5 years, I run solo on the road. And on the other side of our building today, I have 3 new regional sales managers that I'm bringing on to help offset tiredness that I bring to the people, because I'm not young anymore. And as we've mentioned several times before, back to labor for a minute, it may not necessarily be true on the display building side, but the labor average age rate is already up there in my neck of the woods of age, 50s and 60s. So yeah, you got people that just physically can't run that speed anymore, much less younger people who are burning out. So yeah, I think it's we have to get a grasp on that one and reel it in just a little bit, I would think.
Yeah, it's just got to be a conversation that's had as to, well, this is what our plan is, and how does that impact you, and can everybody sign off on that? Or if there's a pain point there, how can we make some small changes that might make it easier for everybody involved? Maybe
it's conveyor belts.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just stack stuff on conveyor belts and route.
Somebody was talking about robots and how that maybe they're going to be robotic floor markers in the future and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think that this is a person-to-person kind of industry. It's a relationship industry. And while there might be other technologies that come along that does make the job easier, I feel like there's always going to need to be someone with a good head on their shoulders and a good problem solver and a good logistics manager that's got to be there to make sure that things work out. Because as long as you feel like you've got a plan that's never going to go sideways, you're going to have a plans that go sideways, because it's just the nature of what we do.
Speaking of the nature of what we do, what a great segue for the 30th annual Randy Smith Memorial Golf Classic. My gosh, Jim, it raced up on us very, very quickly. We're just about, a month and a half, a little under 2 months away
Right.
from the big event. I know in a couple of weeks we'll have the Chicago Randy, which I'll be going to and participating in, and then look forward, of course, to the big Randy. What can you tell us about the homecoming with our industry event that's coming up in September?
Well, 30th year is a big year, as most milestone years are. Certainly lots of excitement and enthusiasm about it. I can tell just because my job is to handle all of the registering of the sponsors and the golfers and keep track of all that information. I know at this point last year, the event was or first week of October 4th or 5th. I forget what the exact date was. At this point, we might have had about 8 or 9, 10 maybe golfers signed up. I just signed up like the 60th golfer today for the 30th annual Randy.
Wow.
The good news is we were a little bit crowded last year because we were at Stone Mountain, only on one course. This year we're going to be back at Chateau Elan. They've got 2 18-hole courses. We're going to be using them both. We'll have one flight or flights on both of those 18s. Lots of fun, lots of interesting wrinkles and games that we like to add. A couple of years ago, we added a fun hole that you could hit your tee shot while sitting on a toilet that was sitting on the tee box. And then wherever you ended up, the best ball in the scramble format, you were lying zero. So it was kind of like a nice little perk, just a fun, different kind of thing. This year, we're going to have a couple of pro female golfers on a couple of the par threes. And there'll be a contest to see if you can beat the pro with their approach to the green on a par three. Just something else, just to have another bit of fun on the course. We'll have, as we've had for the last couple of years, tents on the course where there's different activities going on, different benefits of hot dogs on a couple of them, and beverages and fun games that you can play. Last year, I remember one of them was how far could you drive a marshmallow? So that's the kinds of things that we do just to make it interesting and fun. We already have, certainly, and we do this for the purpose of those in our industry that are in need of our assistance, whether financially or emotionally, or just to embrace them with the love of the industry. We have about 10 recipients already this year. Obviously, all of those are heartbreaking stories, but what I hear most about those families that do come to the Randy is that they feel the warmth and the embrace of those in the industry that help out in this cause. And as many would say, and it certainly is for me, it's my favorite event of the year. It's the favorite thing that I do because it brings together our community in a combined effort. There's not competition. There's not anything but an embrace of love and support for folks that have had a hard experience or a hard year or whatever else is going on for them. They know that there's an industry of people that are willing to step up and reach out a helping hand.
Well, this will probably, I haven't done the math. I probably should have done it before I sat down, but I want to say this will be my 21st or 22nd year of participating in it myself. And also, as many remember, Don Savela from Exhibit City News and I did a 5.5-year run of Don and Mike's show. And we are going to be coming back for a reunion with Don and Mike at the event as well. We're going to be in a tent right outside where we started at years ago, 7 years ago, actually, when we started that. So really, Don and I were chatting. We're really looking forward to that. He and I are also going to be at the Chicago Randy, and we're trying to do the same thing there and
Nice.
get feedback from people who are, participating in his neck of the woods, which is, basically his hometown. And really looking forward to that. Of course, get out of the gutter is coming up next
Right.
month in Atlanta, the bowling event. I'll be in the heck, I guess I'll be in all of them for the rest of the year, leading up to the 30th event. And man, that's awesome. I'm sure it's going to go off without a hitch, and everybody is going to be very excited about participating in this landmark year of this event. Been going on for some time, helped a lot of people.
Yeah. And speaking of reunions, that's one of the other things that we've added to the mix this year. Reached out to a couple of my buddies back in the day when we all used to work at I&D in Atlanta. And so we're having a reunion of those folks from that community in conjunction with the Randy. The actual reunion celebration will happen the evening before, but then we'll have guys that are coming in for the reunion that will also be participating in the event. And if they don't want to golf, then there'll be a tent for them to hang out and just connect and communicate with the friends that they haven't seen in so many years. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. I'm looking forward to that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, rsmgc.org. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the website. Stands for Randy Smith Memorial Golf Classic, but rsmgc.org is the website where you can find all the information about the Atlanta event or the Chicago event. Well, I would love to be in the Chicago event again this year like I have been in the past, but unfortunately I have a conflict this year. Won't be able to make it, but I'll be there in spirit for sure. I'm glad you're able to go there, Mike.
Yeah, try to represent, at least the legacy side of our industry that's been around for a little bit. And really looking forward to that, and also introducing our new regional sales managers out into the field so they can get to know people as we expand our brand here. And
Good place to do it. Yeah.
great place to do it. And we want you to come out and be involved as well. If you'd like to give us feedback on the show, as always, gmail.com rather, is where you could send us your information. Obviously, in the show notes here on social media, you could hit us up with information as well. A question came in from our last show about Apple and iTunes. When's the show going to go on there? We're actually working on that as we speak to have this show on that. We always post the Spotify version that some people are really wrapped up on that iTunes platform with where they get their podcasts. We want to honor that as well. I want to thank Jim Wurm for taking time out of his busy schedule to help us out with this week's show and pinch hitting for Todd. And I hope to see you, sir. If not before the Randy, we'll definitely see you in Atlanta.
Very good, Mike. Thanks very much.
And we're going to call this one a wrap, and we will see you next time on Trade Shows Unhinged.